Good morning for those of you that it's morning, afternoon, and evening for the rest of you around the world. My name is Paul Tobey. Thanks for coming to today's live stream presentation. As always, we are excited and happy to see you here. And for those of you that have started posting in the chat area, that's what we like to see. Chit chat amongst each other, and questions are always welcomed here on the Jazzmentl YouTube channel, and it is a pleasure to see you up and about today on this lovely Easter weekend. Let's start off by sharing the sheet music that I promised to get you. I'm just going to go grab that link and post it right here in the chat. There you go. There's your download link. That link, oh, I spelled download wrong. That's okay. The link is valid, as you know, up until noon Eastern Standard Time, which is approximately 53 minutes from now. We always start off these presentations just to give you a sense of how the live stream is going to go. I play a little bit of the tune that we're going to be working on. The sheet music that you're about to download and that you're going to get right now, I will display that on the screen right now. I took the time yesterday to do this for you. This is a new piece of sheet music. And for those of you that miss the live presentation, I'm going to put a link below in the description to download the sheet music from the store. There is a cost to that, but not for everybody that's here live. That, as always, is your incentive to show up and spend some time with me. So this is a reharmonization of Embraceable You. I did this reharmonization during the opening segment, and I think it's a good one. I mean, I've simplified it a bit from what I played. Obviously, I play everything different every single time, but I try to keep the same feeling in the transcription. I've used the same chords, the same types of inner voices, and we are going to go through this step by step. Let me check in and see if there are any opening comments or questions and see who we can find. Hey, Curry, nice to see you. Ira, El Grupo, Peter, Stuart, Jesse, Jean-Pierre, Vincent, Peter. I got, maybe there's two Peters, Mark. Hey, just a pleasure to see you all here. And one more time, the link is valid until noon, so go grab that. I'm going to give you a second while I gather my thoughts on this reharmonization. We're going to go through it bar by bar. One of the first things that I want you to notice about this reharmonization is if you take a look at this little number here at the beginning of this bar. Obviously, you can count bars, but there is at the beginning of each line a little tiny number that says what bar it is. So we are going to reference bars in this particular sheet music because I've tried to use the writing pen in the past and it kind of gets in the way and it's a little distracting. So we're just going to go through it bar by bar, and I'm going to call out the bars as I see them. And of course, I will take your questions as I'm doing it. Please don't be shy about the questions. I may not answer all of them, but I will do my very best. So let's start off with just the general description of the tune. First of all, this is an AABA tune. The first A section is 8 bars. Then, sorry, this is an A, B, A, C tune. I apologize for that. Meaning there's 2 A sections that repeat and then a B and a C are different. So it kind of repeats. So let's go for the first A section. That's the first A, then we're in B. Then it's back to A. Get the idea. Okay, so that's the first thing. Just get the form out of the way. 16 bars, pretty basic for a jazz standard. Now, Gershwin obviously was famous for many things. Lots of 16-bar tunes, and lots of other types of tunes. For example, one of his most famous is probably, let's see, Rhythm Changes. that is an AABA tune. Then he also wrote Summertime. Okay, so obviously Gershwin was a very prolific composer, one of the best, as far as I'm concerned, of the 20th century. Embraceable You follows the same thought process and musical process as all his tunes. It starts with melody. If you can't sing the melody, then throw it out, because obviously most of these tunes were written for the theater. In this particular case, Embraceable You is a very simple melody. So what I try to do with all of my reharmonizations is accentuate the melody. Don't throw the melody out, because there's a lot of things that you can do, right? You can do things like this, like a lot of jazz people would do. Now, the melody's there, but it's disguised. So when I write a reharmonization, I want to make sure that the melody stands out. So let's take a look at the very first bar, and we'll go through the chord progression from bar 1. You've got a 1, and then flat 3, 2 to 5. And then instead of going to 1, it goes to 2. Now, interestingly enough, what you can do a lot of the times when you're heading to the 2 chord is you can do 1, 4, 3, 6 to 2. Let's try that. 1 to 4 to 3. It kind of works. 1, 4, 3, 6 heading to 2. But in this particular case, I would leave it like it is on the sheet music. Now, the difference in the first bar that I like to point out is we don't start on 1, we're starting on 3. So it's still a 1 chord, G major 7, but instead you're putting the 3rd in the bass. Now, I'll do this a lot. Why? Because I don't like the first chord of a tune to sound like it's the end. Because this sounds like an end. This sounds like a beginning. There's a difference. There's a big difference between those two. So a lot of times if a tune starts on 1, don't start on 1, start on 3. Same kind of chord as 1, but we're starting on 3. Then a B flat diminished 7th. Pretty simple. Just a straight B flat diminished. And then A minor 7. Now here's our first sign of inner voices, from the D sus to the D7 chord. So D sus is basically substituting 4 for 3. But we're going to resolve to 3, but instead of just 3, we're going to do 3 and flat 9. And this is where you get that inner voice sound. Listen to this. See that? Now you can even put an A flat in there if you wanted. Tritone substitution. One more time from the top. I like it with D in the bass because it's more dissonant than this. Right? They're both kind of dissonant, but I like this one because it's got this minor second in the lowest notes. Hear that? That's what you're looking for as a jazz pianist, just kind of all of these, as much dissonance as you can put in, but resolve it, right? Second line, this is just a line cliche, going from A minor to G sharp in the bass to G to D. That's inner voice movement, except it's on the outside of the lowest notes in the left hand. When we get to this one, We're going to change it to a D7 sharp 11. Why? Because the melody note is B. Take a look at the third beat of bar 6. This note. B natural is our melody note. Tritone in the bass, no root, and a triad in the right hand, which is the 9th, the 11th, and the 13th. This is a go-to voicing for anybody that wants to go somewhere else. This needs to be resolved, and it's going to resolve to 1. Second line. Now you could do it without that, and it sort of sounds okay. Listen. But it's better to put this chord in. Hear that? A lot of people, when they play jazz piano, are confused about what sounds good and what doesn't. What I can tell you is anytime you throw in a tritone in the left hand and 9, 11, and 13 in the right, doesn't matter in which context you do that, it's always going to sound great. What you might want to do is just practice that. Just look for a tritone in the left hand and then find out the supporting upper structure triad, which is 9, 11, sharp 11, and 13. So for example, if we plug down this tritone, right, just look for the triad in the right hand. Now you can play that triad in inversions. Doesn't matter. It's dissonant. It wants to be resolved. You know what I mean? It's got to go somewhere. So that's a good exercise for those of you that are thinking, well, how do I get more dissonance in my playing? A dominant 7 sharp 11 chord is a great way to do it. Now there's an example of our inner voices here from the F sharp half diminished 7th or F sharp minor 7 flat 5 for those of you that like to say it like that. I prefer half diminished 7th, but whatever. Inner voices where this note is the 4th of B7 falling to the 3rd, and the right hand goes to the root like this. Now by itself doesn't sound impressive, but in the context of the entire line, listen to this. Hear that? Now that definitely wants to be resolved. Let's do another line cliche on the E minor chord. Let's throw that up near the top here. So now we're on bar 9. Just checking to see if there's any comments or questions about this stuff. But I think it makes sense, yes? Now there's an example where we don't do a different chord on the 4th note. So E minor to E minor major 7th over D over C sharp. Now we've got this progression. I mean, I think that progression right there makes the tune. So we're going from bar 11, B minor 7. And what makes this great is your left hand is descending in 7th chords by half tones. One more time. It sounds great just by itself, but when you add the right hand, this chord here, E7, E flat 7, sharp 9. Why? Because the melody is that note. And that's a great voicing. Why? Because it contains this tritone and then a 4th. Anything voiced in 4ths, intervals of 4, is always going to work great, especially in modern jazz. So this is your sus chord, just basically G major 7 over A. Could be called just an A sus chord, right? It kind of has that flavor, except it's got some extensions. Now here we have, this is pretty common on bar 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. You've got D major 7, passing chord, B flat diminished 7. We've had that before. And then you've got this. Listen to this. Why? And we've talked about this before in these master classes and in my tutorials on YouTube. When you've got a line that ascends or descends using a scale, in this case, it's the last part of a D major 7 chord, or D major 7 scale. Listen. Anytime you have that, use some type of drop 2 voicing will always work. So all we're doing is we're taking these chords, starting on the 2nd chord, and we're taking this note and dropping it down an octave. Same for the next one. Right? We're just taking the 2nd note from the top, dropping it down an octave. Beautiful stuff. All right, let's play from bar 9. Let's play it with the correct melody. Also, when I play that, I want you to really focus on phrasing. Like, when we're going up this scale, for example, what did you notice? Did I get louder or did I get softer? A lot of musicians would get louder. They'd be like, I think when you go up, using these drop 2 voicings, get softer. Listen. But as you get softer, put a little rallentando, retard, slow down, right? Wait it out. Beautiful. One more time. Slow, right? A little retard. Next phrase. Top. And we're going to go scroll down. The A section is the same. So here's at the end of the 2nd line, bar 24, 21, 22, 20, yes, 24. So this bar here, I've kind of highlighted it in blue a little bit there with my mouse. Instead of doing a 2-5 of E minor, like we did in the first A section, to E minor, in this case, we're going to C instead. So look at these chords. Big chords. You don't want to bash that chord, by the way. It just sounds horrible when you do it. Play it nice and listen to that. The overtones. Can you hear that? Let me know in the chat if you can hear that. Okay? And then to our D flat 7 sharp 11 chord. Why does that work? Well, it's a very typical sort of advanced jazz thing to do. Instead of going from D minor to G7 to C, we put more dissonance in there by using the tritone substitution, but I'm throwing a 5th in the bass and then throwing the triad and the tritone like this. Tritone, and then could be a triad in the top, but the G is the melody, so we don't want to go too high. Isn't that lovely? If you just do that one thing, that's the only thing that you get from today, it was well worth you showing up. How many of you already do things like that in your playing? Let me know. And then when we do this, That's one of my favorite things of the tune. I wrote that into the arrangement. A lot of people wouldn't do that. They just do something like this. But again, look what we're doing. We're using the scale, G major scale. It's just we're going down 3 notes and then going back up. So use your drop 2 voicings. Listen to how that sounds, right? So from here, soft. F half diminished 7th to B7 flat 9, right? Slow that line down. One more time from the A minor. Here's our drop 2 voicings. Line cliche. And then ending. 3, 6, 2, 5. 3, 6, 2, 5. Going to 1, right? Last line. Notice that there's a rest on the first beat of the last line, first beat of bar 29. Let's go from the line before it. You don't have to fill every space. I find that the more space you put in your music, the more musical it sounds. So we just left a beat out. We could have thrown a root in there, but it kind of like takes away from the feeling of space. And then don't go to 1. All right, let's check in with you. Now that we've gone through the reharm, so Vincent says, at times I use the tritone, but not often enough. I bet that's true. I don't think people use tritone substitutions enough. I use them all the time. For example, even in the last section where we're doing 3, 6, 2, 5, if you did that with tritones, hear how different that sounds? I like the softness of this ending, but I also like tritone subs for this. Okay. Peter says, I'm quite familiar with drop 2, but I'm still learning how to use them, practicing reharmonization. Yeah. I mean, basically drop 2 is just taking a 4-note voicing like this, C major 7, D minor 7, E minor 7, F major 7, G7, A minor 7, B7, B half diminished 7th or B minor 7 flat 5 to C major 7, right? But taking this note, second note from the top, and just dropping him. Listen to how much better it sounds than this. Listen. And then if you used your half diminished scale instead, it gets even better. Okay. Or sorry, 6 diminished, not half diminished scale. 6 diminished scale. Question from El Grupo, Cache, Dallas. How do you embellish the melody and how to make it sound bluesy? Oh, well, if you want to make something sound bluesy, just use blues. So let's take the perfect example of, and I don't know what your name is, El Grupo. Maybe you could give us your real name. I love calling people by their name. But anyway, El Grupo. Let's just do the line cliche from E minor. If you want to embellish that melody, just use blues scale. So the blues scale on E minor is this. Listen, if we just play that. I mean, sounds bluesy. But what you do is instead of just playing a blues scale, you would slide notes. So this is the blue note. This note here is the blue note of a blues scale. It's always the fourth note. 1, 2, 3, 4. This note, so the flat 5, that's the blue note of the scale. So what you do is you slur it, like I'm just basically going from here to here to here really quickly. So I'm passing through it. Just like that. And I'm just using these blue notes, that one, and also sort of major 7 as well. There's a billion things you can do. Okay? Does that answer your question, El Grupo? I think that's pretty much the most basic explanation of embellishing a melody with blues scales I can. It works really well when you get to minor line cliches. There's 2 of them in this tune. Let me point those out. The first one is when we do the line cliche on A minor starting in bar 5. That's right here. So we can do an A minor blues. Or we can do it on E minor, same line cliche. Oh, look, I even wrote it in here. These grace notes, that's blues scale. So I've actually baked it into the tune. I should have pointed that out when we went through this the first time. Okay. Let's go back. So Ira says the space, it has an effect like an overtone. Just let the silence resonate. Very well said, Ira. Appreciate that. Alan, would you comment again on the method or theory for voicings in bar 24? Let's see. 8, 16, 21, 22. Oh, here. Right. So we did this before. Let's go from bar 21, which is the A minor line cliche. Okay. One thing I did different there was if you look at the actual sheet music, it's D minor 9 and then D flat 7 sharp 11, but I held that note. I didn't play it again. I just let it resonate. I didn't hit the G twice. So you want me to comment on the harmony. Basically, it's a 2-5-1. So D minor to G7 to C major 7. Everything in jazz is pretty much a 2-5-1. At least 85% of jazz, in my view, can be broken down into 2-5-1s. Once you get 2-5-1s onto your fingers and you do like 2-5-1 of G, 2-5-1 of B flat, 2-5-1 of E flat, of A flat, right? As soon as you get that under your fingers, then you use the tritone substitution, which is just basically the same tritone. So for example, G7, it's built on this chord, 1, 3, 5, 7 from the key of C, okay? All you have to do to build a chord is build up in thirds using the key. If the key is C, there are no accidentals. Build in thirds. Then you got a 9. 11's not available because it creates a flat 9 with the third of the chord. Bad. So that's where sharp 11 comes in. So you just alter it. Sounds a lot better than this. This just sounds wrong. This sounds jazz. Okay, now that's root position. So the interesting thing about that chord is there's a tritone in there, which is essentially a flat 5. Here's a natural 5. here's the flat 5. So with the third of the chord, the reason why it's called a tritone is because it contains the third and the 7th, a flat 5 apart. That's a tritone. That's the same tritone as D flat. Look at D flat. 1, 3, 5, 7. Same tritone. So G7, D flat 7. Same. That's the tritone substitution. You're taking a tritone from the 5th and throwing it into the flat 2. It's the same chord, it just has different notes, different alterations. That sounds a lot different than this. A lot more jazz. This is G7, this is D flat 7, sharp 11. I've done my best to exhaust the explanation of that. I hope that answers your question. Was it, who asked it? Yes, Alan. Does that answer your question? Because that is tritone plus, what was that? Okay, how do I get the sheet music? Oh, Arthur Williams. So Nancy posted, just look Jazzmentl, Arthur, there's the sheet music link right there. Okay, excellent. Oh, El Grupo. I'm going to try to remember because we have the same name. Your name is Pablo. You know, when I walked to the Camino de Santiago in Spain a couple of times, that's what they called me there, Pablo. Because it's kind of like Spanish for Paul. So Pablo, we have the same name. Excellent. I'll try to remember that next time. All right. Do you like using the 5 voicing in the left hand and the Bill Evans voicing in the right hand? Yeah, I use fifths a lot in the left. I think that's what you mean by that, right? You're talking about playing a fifth in the bass and then some type of upper structure, you know, thing in the right hand. It could be a cluster, could be closer, could be more notes. The thing that Bill Evans does is he does a lot of things like this. So he's taking the D flat 7 scale and he's just playing triads. So if we went like this, let's go back to our sheet music, and we went from A minor. When Bill would get to hear it, he'd do something like this. And then he'd resolve, right? He'd find some way to use triads from the scale. I'm not sure if that's what you're asking me, but that's what I think the question means. Like using this, you know, weighted fifth in the left hand and then playing some type of Bill Evans voicings in the right hand. So, I mean the tritone voicing in the, I can't actually see that. It's got a heart over top of it. I wish I could read that. So, I mean the tritone voicing in the right hand. Stuffy Nab. I mean the tritone voicing. Here. I'm sorry, Stuffy, you're going to have to be a little bit more specific. I'm still not completely following you. Beautiful digression on Bill Evans. Thank you. Okay. I'm going to, while Stuffy makes his question a little more, or her question a little more clear, I'm going to go back here and I am going to tackle the tune again. This time we're going to do some more embellishing, and I'll try to talk about some of the things that I'm doing while I'm doing it. I'm going to follow the same progression, the same chord reharmonization, but I'm going to embellish the melody and explain it as best I can. So. I haven't done anything yet. So there's one. Now that's an easy one. Basically all you're doing is you're using a what they call in classical music a trill, or in classical music they do things like this. Don't do that in jazz, it just sounds bad. So instead of using like that, you're just using 2 notes, right? Quickly. Now, what did I do there? So look at the F sharp half diminished 7th chord to B7. All I did was I played some of the notes from the F sharp half diminished chord, which is this. I did this. Something like that. And then I dispelled the chords of B7 flat 9. Going to the melody note. So I know that I'm heading on the bar 9 to this note, which is a little out of tune. I just tuned this piano like 2 days ago. Okay, so that's interesting. F sharp, half diminished 7th, spell some kind of chord. And my fingers don't always know exactly what they're going to do, but my fingers know the difference, and my brain knows the difference between an F sharp half diminished chord and a B7. B7 is just basically this diminished, like a C diminished chord, or an E flat diminished chord, or an F sharp diminished chord, or an A diminished chord, which are just all root position, first inversion, second inversion, third inversion. My brain knows that that's part of a B7 chord. Here we are where we're going to embellish with blues. Oh, there's one. So that's an enclosure. So all I'm doing is, this is the destination note. Our key of the moment is G. So take some things from the G scale and go up, down, and back. Like that. Let's play a chord. So all I'm doing is I'm arpeggiating a G major 7 chord over A, and then arpeggiating an E7 flat sharp 9 chord. Okay, next line, D7. So again, I'm just using these little sort of like enclosures. So an enclosure on E would be on F, simple enclosure, over, under, over, back, right? There's different ones. You kind of get used to them. Just scale, right? And then we're on a D sus chord. You can use the same E minor blues scale. Okay, so there's some embellishing ideas that I do. Let's play it one more time. I'll do a lot more embellishing this time. That one is just, I'm falling down to the destination note by half steps. that's a diminished scale. Blues scale. Three, 6, 2, 5. Okay. Interesting ideas on how to embellish the melody. Mostly enclosures, but there's a lot of other things like scales and little trills and things that I talked about. Okay. All right, we've got a bigger explanation from Stuffy. Let's take a look at that. Stuffy Nev. What's your name? I was referring to the use of 5/7 voicing in the left hand and simultaneously using the tritone substitution in the right hand. Alan is your name. Got it. I get why, because, you know, my eyesight isn't that great. All right, Alan. So I'm using 5/7 voicing. So I'm not actually, I don't do that a lot. So if I do that, it would be, let's take a G7 chord. So 2, 5, 1 of C. If I'm doing G7, I'll play either root and 7th, or root and 5th, or root 7th and 3rd. This is what I'll do in the left hand. I'll hardly ever do an entire voicing. If I do that, it would be rootless. Something like that. And then if you use the tritone substitution in the right hand, it gets really messy. So this is like, actually that's not too bad. I'll use the sharp 11 in the right hand, but I won't use the tritone again. Typically in all of my voicings, I won't use a tritone twice. Not in the left hand and the right hand at the same time. So I think, Alan, what you need to think about is how can you get as many extensions into the chord as possible without repeating them and space them out properly. So for example, D flat 7, I might have to roll this or just play the root in the left hand and then play as many extensions, 9, sharp 11, and 13. But because I'm not playing the tritone in the left hand, I gotta cover it in the right hand. So I'll do something like that. I also might do this to get the 13th up top. Like that. So this voicing, or this voicing. And then there's a million other things, like I said, that you could do on that same thing by following the D flat 7 scale, playing triads. Okay? Alan, I hope that helps. So Nancy wrote that due to a scheduling conflict, our next masterclass is rescheduled for Thursday, April 4th at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So mark your calendars for the next live stream. Any suggestions for live stream topics are also welcomed. I typically think them up 2 or 3 days ahead of time, and then I make... Alan says, terrific answer. Good. And then I'm glad you got the answer to your question. I typically make these ideas and sheet music a couple of days ahead of time. So if you could get me a good topic for the live stream presentations, yes, we're just riffing for an hour and I do answer questions and talk about many things, but it's nice to have a theme. In this particular case, the theme is Embraceable You and George Gershwin. I'm going to flip gears right now, and I'm going to take the idea from whoever it was that asked, and my memory is short this morning, was asking about using blues to embellish the melody. I think it was Pablo, maybe. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch tunes. I'm going to go to another Gershwin tune and really sort of like do the blues thing. So we're going to go to Summertime. So just for those of you that don't know the progression, the simple progression is 1 to 4 to 1 to 2 to 5. And then it does a 2-5 to 1 to here and then 2-5. So the key of the moment is E flat or B flat, sorry. Goes to 1 B flat to 4 and 2-5-1 of G minor. Let's play it. So the only reason why I just kind of jumped into that for a second was just to kind of show you that no matter how simple the progression is, which is just simple, you can always find tritone substitutions and 2-5-1s and stuff. Now, I know I got a comment from Vincent who says, intermediate, I understand almost all the concepts, but sometimes things are presented just a tad too quickly. The repetition helps a lot. So that's where questions come in. So we had the question about tritone substitutions. I spent a bit of time on that, obviously. And I think this is an important point, and I like to leave you all with a little bit of music philosophy. At some point, the knowledge that you have filters into your playing, but you can't do everything at once. It's nice to take little bite-sized chunks and kind of work them out, like the tritone substitution thing. How do you eat an elephant? It's like one bite at a time. You can't bite off an entire 50 years of jazz experience in one 1-hour session and kind of grasp everything. Nobody expects that to happen. What you're here for is you're here to enjoy the sound, get used to it with your ears, and pick up 1 or 2 concepts per live stream or per video on the Jazzmentl channel. That's all we're trying to do. We're trying to give you as much small sort of bite-sized chunk tidbits. Trying to catch everything that I'm talking about is never a good plan. I'm responding to questions as best I can and trying to engage people with their ideas, which is why we kind of riff on certain things. I wanted to dive into the minor blues there because that was one of the ideas that we had from a question earlier. Again, my philosophy on jazz piano is just that. You can only bite off bite-sized chunks, little tiny bites at a time, and work those things out before moving on to the next. How do you learn? You learn by doing. You don't learn by listening. I mean, obviously, we're creating some listening skills and we're picking up ideas from these live streams, but the learning can only come by doing. So pick one thing. Review this live stream. As soon as we're done, it's there. You can go back and review it as many times as you want. Just go to the live section of our channel, check out the live stream, and review it. Obviously, if you're watching for entertainment purposes, I hope we're entertaining you. But for those of you that want to learn, you got to go back and do this video again. Analyze it. You have to take the time to do those kinds of things. You'll be much better off for it, but only do one thing at a time. Make that part of your consciousness, part of your subconscious, and then move on. If you can't do something like this without thinking, then it's not time to move beyond blues scales. It's time to just cover the blues scale. Can't do that with a blues scale, then you should still do blues scales. Does that make sense? Like, practice one thing at a time. Don't do 100 things at a time. It's never going to work. All right, that's my thought for today. I hope that helps you. Take a look. We're rescheduling next Saturday's live stream to Thursday, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, because I have a conflict that day. It is a family thing. I apologize for that. For those of you that want to know, I wondered if I should share this with you or not, but obviously my father died recently, and we have a committal service. And yeah, it's a big thing for me, so I'm going to take next Saturday off. I hope that's okay with you. Everybody, I hope you enjoy the sheet music. Thank you so much for hanging out with me on Easter weekend. I truly appreciate it, and I love you all for showing up, and we will see you on Thursday. Take care, everyone.